Elizabeth, oh my gosh, I needed that break, even for my own heart, but also for you.
I really appreciate getting to talk with you guys about this today, because I know in the depths of my soul that if I survived what I survived and I'm still breathing today, that there is somebody who needs to hear my story and who this can help them to not only survive but to find ways to thrive. It's got to be somebody, or I wouldn't be alive. I wouldn't have lived through that if there was nobody for me to help.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful. I hope that's true. So I think that's a good segue into your spiritual awakening and path out of all this, because really that's a horrifying childhood. Horrifying. No child anywhere should have to go through something like that. And the fact that you are here with us today, and how beautiful
Yes.
you are, and you know what? By the way, I think your singing voice and your ability, your creative, artistic ability, is what brought your brain together, or really helped
Yes.
you.
Yes, it was a saving grace. When I was 3, my mother took our whole family and some friends to see the movie The Sound of Music. Before that, I didn't know I had a voice before I was 3. Once I saw that movie, I did not stop singing. I did not stop singing. I sang and I sang and I sang. My mother even said, and this is in her religious understanding, she said, "You were singing in tongues." And if you know anything about the Pentecostal church, you know that they speak in languages that we don't understand.
Yes.
Anyway, I was singing in a language that she did not understand. So she said I was singing in tongues. I have no idea. I just know that it became to me a salve for my soul to sing. And at the tender age of 8, I made my first recording. Remember back when they had the tape deck, and you put the tape deck in and close the lid, and you push play and record, or whatever, you record at the same time? Yes, I made my first recording, and it was all gospel music because I didn't know anything else, because she had us in church all the time, go figure. We were in church all the time. I had this big fat songbook that my grandmother, I think, had given me, and I sang all the songs I knew. It was like 90 minutes of just me singing and eating an apple. And I would sing a song, and then crunch, you'd hear crunch in the recording, and I would be eating an apple.
Do you still have that recording?
Unfortunately, no, and here is why. I made that recording, and it was my pride and joy. And then my mom, who was a very wicked person to me, edited out my apple chewing without my consent. It was the only vestige of power that I had, that I made that recording by myself. I was so proud of me. She took it, she edited it, and then she handed it back to me. And because she destroyed what I made, and I thought it was cute to eat the apple, I destroyed the tape. And I'm kind of sad that I destroyed the tape, but in a way, that was me saying, you don't have power over me. I'm taking my power back. It was the only thing my little 8-year-old, 9-year-old body could do, because she did own me, essentially. I was her child, and I had to do what she said, or else. And if I said what instead of ma'am, it was over. Like, it was a beating, So I had my place, but I stood my ground on some things that I could. I learned how to do that. And as far as the spiritual aspect of things goes, when I found out about this guy named Jesus who said I could do everything he did and more, I was like, oh, wow, maybe there is hope. I can, I'm going to depend on this person. I'm going to be friends with this person, because I need that skill. I need that skill to do that, So I definitely had a relationship in my heart with this person named Jesus. I wasn't as dependent upon this person that people call God, but Jesus was my buddy. Because I could relate, because he was abused. I think that's what, because they beat him, all these things happened to him. And I had heard about that. And yet, he said, I could do what he did, and even more. So I felt like, well, if he was from that terrible background and he said that I could do this, then I can. So that was really important for me to carry after this point, because my mom took my middle brother and I and ran away in the middle of the night, leaving my 17-year-old brother at home alone, not even knowing that we had left. And escaped from, this is in Arkansas, we were in Arkansas, and took us in the middle of the night on a bus to New York without saying goodbye. This is my protective brother, the tall, big, strong one who was a teenager already. He was protecting me from the people that didn't like me at the church and all these things. She took us away from him without a goodbye, which was, it threw me into PTSD, I'm pretty sure, is what I would say now today it would be called.
Well, especially if he was what you said was your protector, someone you could rely on, felt safe with.
Yes.
And then you don't have that safety anymore. I can't imagine what he even did, even at that age, waking up and realizing everybody was gone.
He told me he walked around for 2 months bumping into walls. He barely ate. He didn't know. He was in a fog for 2 months. Just walking.
What was your mother like? I just have such a hard...
She was very stern. Very stern. I've been called serious. I have kind of a serious nature. She was very stern most of the time. At least that's the part of her that us kids experience. Now, people are different for different people, but she was stern with us. When she wasn't sold out to one religion. She was sold out to any religion that meant we didn't have to eat. Like the excuse me, the Hebrew holiday that makes you fast. All of a sudden we were celebrating that because we didn't have to eat. Like, she made us fast. So it was like the holidays that and the religions that meant we didn't have to do Christmas. She was on board with that. If it meant we didn't have to do Thanksgiving dinner, she was on board with that.
Oh, so it was really about money, or her lack of having the money, the ability to provide those things for each of you.
Yeah,
was
and birthdays
she educated? Was she educated?
She was highly educated. Highly. She skipped 11th grade. She went on to college, and she tested out of every class until she quit. She was angry at the government, and then she went and did radical things with whoever. I don't know who she worked for. But
was she a disciplined person?
She was a disciplinarian.
Yeah.
She was very much a disciplinarian. And she must have been some kind of discipline, because to know 5 languages, enough to read Russian and Hebrew newspapers and not let your kids find you doing so, she must have, she was very, very, very smart, but in an incredibly dangerous way.
Did she have friends that you met or saw at all, or?
They weren't friends. I would say they were people who could get her money, or they were people who she was getting information from. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Worldwide Church of God, but she was hip deep with people in there, very political group, and I think she was probably information hunting. I don't really believe for a minute that she was even that religious. I just think she was fronting in order to gain information, because I think that's why we moved every 6 months. Wow. So, but I wanted to go back to when we moved to New York, when she took us and ran away to New York. I started having what I would call today seizures, where I would go to bed at night and I would start like my lips would start tingling and I would start trembling, and then I would like, because I knew this guy named Jesus, I would start praying. I just started praying. Sometimes I could pray myself out back into calm body state. But many, many nights I would tremor so hard that I would end up falling on the floor or hitting the wall. And my mother, in all of her not necessarily wisdom or whatever she had, she would say, well, it's just the devil. Go back to bed and pray. And she wouldn't take me to the doctor. She would just say, go pray. So that's all I could do, because I'm at the mercy of this woman.
So it could have been possibly the brain situation you talked about earlier,
Absolutely.
but it could, I think more, it was probably trauma.
It was probably trauma, and it could have been a combination of the fact that my brain was missing that part, plus the trauma was too much
Right.
for me. And that went on from the age of 9 until the age of 15, when I was almost ready to run away from home, which I did run away from home.
So how old were you when you ran away?
When I ran away from my mom's house, I was 15. And she had gotten it. By this time, I had been shuffled off to all kinds of people's houses for all kinds of lengths of time, and then back in the home with her and my stepdad, which was another very dangerous situation. And so I decided I was going to run away, because I said, I'm not going to stay in this home and become a victim again, to this man.
So where did you run to?
Well, a woman came to my mom's door one night and told her I was going to run away. I didn't know who this woman was. I think I had seen her one time at one of the churches we'd gone to, but she showed up at my mom's door. I had my suitcase already packed, okay? But this woman showed up at my mom's door and said, the Lord said your daughter's going to run away from home. And do you know what my mother did? She said, you take her then. And sent me in my little bag with this red-headed woman to her farm, her ranch, 22,000 acre ranch, an hour and a half from where we were staying. And there I went, 15 years old, with this woman I didn't know, because that's the solution. If your kid's going to run away, you just send her with a stranger, which is what she did. Washed her hands of me real fast. And I went to this woman's home, and I was grateful to be there, I guess, because I was headed to, I thought in my immaturity I was going to go to New York and become a paid prostitute, because at least I would be getting paid, and at least I could say no, or at least I could decide who I'm going to, quote, serve, which wasn't happening in my life up to that point.
Right.
I had no power. So I was going to take back my power. That was my 15-year-old thinking. I'm kind of glad I didn't do that, because I think that would not have worked out well. But so instead I went with this woman to her home. She was a self-proclaimed good witch who had 2 sons, one freshly divorced, who I ended up thinking I was falling head over heels with, but really it was just trauma. Me coming away from being in a slave situation into a situation where I'm totally free and can do whatever I want. It was like candy. I'm in a candy store and I don't know what to do. I just will take it all. I'll take it all. And so, when you've been abused at a young age, you bring all of that emotional immaturity with you into anything. Well, I brought that emotional immaturity with me into that marriage and into 4 other marriages, which none of them turned out really well. I've gotten beaten. I've gotten, abused verbally and mentally and emotionally and financially, and a lot of things have happened in my marriages because I didn't know what a marriage was even supposed to be, or how to pick a good person, because I'd never seen a good man modeled to me. So that was disastrous. The last marriage is when I started to come into a spiritual awareness that God and Jesus and all these other beings that we have a name for aren't out there. They're in here, fully accessible anytime I can just call upon in here. And I started meditating, and because I was it was another bad relationship, and I needed help, and I'd been doing counseling, and they had said, I don't know how you're still alive, but I'm glad you are, and maybe you should try meditation. So I did. I meditated, and I started seeking out things like the I Ching, the Tao Te Ching of Lao Tzu, and reading things like that, like The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. So I was starting to really know who I was. And that really helped me to survive my last marriage. And my last marriage is what showed me that the power rests in me. Before I'm going to tell you that story, though, I got to go back to when I was 10. I realized my parents didn't have power. I realized that they weren't as powerful as they said they were. This is my stepdad and my mom. Mm-hmm. They were trying to, quote, cast a demon out of my sister, my stepsister, who had a mental illness. And they were going to, quote, cast a demon out of her. Well, she tore the crap out of them, trying to get away from them, which showed me that they really don't have this, quote, power that they say they have. And then my mom decided to do a 40-day fast. When she came back off of her 40-day fast, she apparently started going into a seizure or something. And she was in the back room of our trailer, and I wasn't. I was out here. No, I didn't know what was going on. And my stepdad came and called me. He said, you got to come here. I need you. He said, I've prayed and I've rebuked the devil and I've prayed, and she's still like this. And my mom's mouth was all drawn up, and her hands were all drawn up, and she was like shriveling away. And I'm in that moment, I'm 10, right? I'm almost 11, and I'm still in complete trauma from my childhood, and I'm still in it. And she's like, looks like she's dying. And I'm flashed in my little mind was, if she dies, I'm stuck with him. I don't even know. Okay, so he asked me to pray for her. And I am so traumatized by the thought that I might not even have her, who I know the badness of her. I started stomping around in that room, rebuking the devil, which is all I knew how to do. I said, get out of here. Get out of my mom. I was like, in my mind, cussing him out. Stomping around, cussing him out in my language. And I did that for a few minutes, and she was fine. This is after my stepfather couldn't accomplish the task. I went in there and kicked what he would call the devil's ass. Excuse my French. Because I was so petrified that she could die and I could be left with him. And now I know I wasn't kicking the devil's anything. I was taking metaphysical authority over all the energy in that room, and I set it straight. Oh, wow. I set it straight. 10 years old. Because I meant it. I was like, oh no, I'm not going to live that life with a man. I'm not, because I knew he was after me. So anyway, back to my last marriage. The man who walked into my life in my last marriage put on a face of spirituality and floating above the forest. And I didn't know who he really was until Sage was born. And it was clear by his words and his actions that he was sexually abusive to my son. And I had to get us out. And I had to flee for our lives. And I started chanting every day. And I started chanting Yod He Vav He every day. And I wrote out a plea to the universe, to the highest court in existence. And I said, if I've done wrong, kill me now. If he's done wrong, get him away from us. keep him away from us forever. And I chanted and did that for 11 months. Guess what happened 11 months later?
He was gone.
He died of cancer and heart disease. And he didn't know until 6 weeks before he was going to die. And I didn't believe him. I said, well, I'll believe it when I see the death certificate. And, we're in hiding. My son and I are in hiding when he emails me this information. Sure enough.
Wow, Elizabeth. And we're going to have to end there. I can't even imagine ending there, but wow. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're here with us and still alive. Okay, so we're going to take a break.